Now it's on.
Yes, we can start.
Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Okay, so. In now. Hello, everybody. Now we will start. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce June Feiner. Until I moved recently, I had the pleasure of living in an apartment right opposite hers. So I think I know some of the things I'm going to ask her, but it'll be interesting. We're going to focus mostly on the many activities that June belongs to, attends. However, you've all seen the ads on television for batteries for the ever ready bunny who is beating on the drum all the time and never stops moving. June Feiner is the living embodiment of the ever ready bunny, as you will see. In the introduction that was written out for this meeting, it talked about two of her committees, which we'll begin with. Those two are the walkers and the play readers. But once we finish talking about them, you'll be astounded at the number of other committees and activities that this woman does. June, hello. Talk to us a little bit about your favorite group, I think, the walkers.
Well, all the groups I go to are my favorites. The Woodland Walkers has only been active for about 4 years, I think. I don't even remember when it started, but I've been a walker for a long time, and I belong to a group up at the Mohonk Preserve that goes out walking on Wednesday mornings. And as more and more fitter people moved in here, I thought it would be nice if people here would have the opportunity to go out and walk in the woods, not just on the concrete, around the complex. So I suggested it, I guess, to Gretchen and Sarah that we could start a group of walkers here just once a month. And we got approval to have the bus take us to some trailhead somewhere in the area at no cost, because this was an athletic activity. It was good for people's health. We managed to describe it in such a way that they don't charge us for the bus trip. And we go to some interesting places. And the group is usually, I would say, from 5 to 11 and in number. We go out on the first Wednesday of the month at 2:00 in the bus. And the walk is usually, I would say, 2.5 miles. We're out for about 1 3/4 hours. So it's not very onerous, but you do have to be able to walk, at a reasonable pace. And we've accumulated a nice hardcore of people who enjoy that activity. And unfortunately, we had to cancel yesterday because of the excessive heat. We thought it was wise to do that. And next first Wednesday is the big October the 4th drill. So we have to cancel that one. But I'm hoping in November, we'll go walking, maybe to Black Creek, which is a very nice little
I'm going to
preserve.
rush you ahead because you are in so many groups. Tell me a
About
little
the
bit
play readers.
about the play readers.
Okay, play readers. Again, I don't remember when we started, but it must have been around 2010 or 11. I moved in 2009, and a couple of us had done some dramatic activity in the past and thought it would be fun. And I don't even remember how we got Beverly Brum. She was a professor of drama at SUNY New Paltz. And I think she had just retired or was about to retire. And she agreed to come once a week and run a play reading group. And we had, 8 of us who were interested, and then 9 and 10. And eventually it got to be, quite a significant group. And we read a whole variety of plays. Became a really wonderful activity. And then she retired and went to Colorado or something. She wasn't well. And she suggested this guy, Don Wildey, who some of you may have known. He was very active at the college. He was a professor of communications, I think, and very active in the drama department. And he was also a participant in a local readers theater group called the Mohawk Mountain Stage.
I've got to keep moving you ahead.
And
Is the group almost filled right now?
yeah, so what happened was that under Don's guidance, the group became bigger and bigger and bigger, and we split up into 2 groups. And I don't remember whether this happened when Don was still in operation or when he retired and Richard Catabiani came on board. But anyway, now we have 2 groups, and Richard runs group 1 from 2:30 till 4 o'clock, and group 2 from 4:15 till 5:45. And both groups are, group 1 is pretty much full. 13 is about the most we can possibly fit comfortably into the art studio. And group 2 has, I think, 1 or 2 possible openings. And what we do is we read plays. It's what's called a cold reading. We haven't seen the plays before. We don't know what's going to happen. And he just gives us a cast. He casts us around the table in order. And if in the first 4 pages, there's 3 characters, you, and you take those characters. And then after those 4 pages, the next 5 people will take the roles, and we go all the way around the table. And it's great. And then about once a year, we used to actually put on a performance. These were all staged readings. None of us can remember lines anymore. So we put on a whole bunch of plays. And then with COVID, of course, that all stopped.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you on that one right
Now
now.
there's a new thing happening on
Oh, she won't let me.
on the first Tuesday of the month at 7 o'clock. Individual members of the group will do a presentation. So look in your calendar. I think it's the 17th. Addie Haas and one other person will be doing a presentation under the auspices of the play reading group, reading a short story or something like that. Okay.
And that's just the beginning of the things
That's the
that you're
play
on.
read. That's the play read.
You happen to be on the council, and in the audience here, at least 2/3 of the council is present, which is impressive.
Yes.
What is the council all about?
Oh.
Okay,
The council is the eyes and ears of the residents, and we try to be a bridge between administration and the Residents Association. All of you are part of the Resident Association, and we try really, really hard to bring all of your interests to management and sort out any questions or complaints or discussions that are necessary.
okay, then you belong to another group that tries to make us be good citizens. It's called the Sustainability Committee. What's that all about?
The Sustainability Committee is trying to prevent waste, to promote, reuse, recycle, refuse plastics. And we have some subcommittees, some task forces. We have the Energy Task Force, and that has been operational with changing the light bulbs to the LED bulbs. And we've been pushing for solar panels, which will be put on the cottages, but are not feasible on the main building. And then we have a sort of trash, garbage, compost subcommittee that is trying to negotiate with and the dining committee liaison people. They are negotiating with the dining people about composting everything possible and in reusing the 3-part containers. So we have liaisons with different groups around the agency here. One of the new things is this sort of land management subcommittee task force. There will be 4 plots have been designated. So instead of lawns, which are really expensive to maintain and costly and dangerous because of the pesticides and herbicides used, we're going to have 4 test patches which will be sown with various alternatives. I think one will be clover, one will be wildflowers, and I'm not sure what the choices are for the other 2 plots, but that is going to happen.
Okay, that almost segues into the Land Conservation Committee, which used to be
The Millbrook Preserve
Millbrook Preserve.
Committee, yeah. In the beginning, we were active as a group. That started pretty early because of the land behind us that we gave an easement to the Wallkill Valley Land Trust. And through them and through the town and the village, the Millbrook Preserve was created. And our task at that time was to maintain contact with the Millbrook Preserve and to work on making trails that continued with their trails. And it has become a little bigger than that, but we still work very closely with the Millbrook Preserve. And some of us are trail stewards. I think Artie Raphael is the trail steward for maybe the Pink Trail, and I look out onto the Yellow Trail. And we help, I don't, but some of them have been helping with getting rid of aliens. And also Paul Fargus has made many, many of the wooden signs and the trail markers, which is wonderful. So we have a good relationship with that. And every 2 months we sponsor a speaker on the topic of land conservation. And this Tuesday, the 17th, Bob Anderberg, who's a top shot lawyer with the Open Space Institute, is going to give a presentation. I recommend you all come to that. He was very much part of the group that saved Minnewaska. There was going to be a big development there, the Awasting development, and that was prevented by the Open Space Institute, and it's now part of the park. And they've done a lot of other conservation easements and freed up a lot of land. They work with Scenic Hudson, helping them. It's a wonderful organization, the Open
Okay,
Space Institute.
but before you get to all those meetings, in the morning, don't you do some aerobics or yoga?
Yeah, I'm in the mornings, I do the water aerobics, and Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, I sort of lead a little group. I picked up some of the routine from previous teachers, and we run through a routine mostly for the upper body and the abdominals. And I also do go to Rick Gracie's class a couple times a week. And then Deborah Moore runs this very nice yoga class at 10 o'clock on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I usually go on Mondays and Fridays to that.
Now, there's a woman who just walked in the room, Nora Brown, who's going to be 90 in a couple of days, and you go to her
Yes,
exercise
Nora
groups.
does a wonderful group on Tuesdays at 11 called Music, Movement, and You. And she puts on some music and we just prance around. It's really fun.
Now,
No,
okay,
it's just prancing.
now everybody here take a deep breath. How could anybody do that many activities? But she keeps going. She keeps moving all the time. And with the frailties and aches that bodies go through, she actually had a very brief period when she was in a wheelchair. And being as I was on the floor with her, I tried to push her down the hall. She had to get that exercise. It was amazing. Now I want to move on to something which is interesting to me.
Also welcome and dining.
Oh, welcome and dining committee, little smaller committees.
Yeah.
I think we've heard a whole lot about welcome and dining
Yeah.
committees both. Okay, but who is this woman who does all these things? Where were you born, June?
I was born in London.
In London?
Yeah.
Before the war.
Yes.
And what happened when the war came?
I was evacuated to the country with my sister, and we spent about 4 years there in a little town called Bideford in Devonshire.
What was it like to go living with?
Well, we were lucky.
Strangers?
We were very lucky. Many of the children in London were randomly assigned to families, some of whom were not crazy about receiving children from the big city. We had a nanny, and my father was a doctor, we were middle class. We had a nanny, and our nanny had relatives. Well, her parents lived in Bideford. So we actually went to Bideford with nanny and stayed in her parents' house. So we were lucky. And then ultimately, when nanny had to go back to London to visit, to be with a baby cousin, we went to a boarding school in that same little town. So it was, on the whole, a good experience.
Do you have any memories of the war?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, before we were sent away, I can sort of remember, bombs and stuff. And when I came back, we had this was like a bunker in the backyard. It was like a 10-foot deep concrete room under the ground, and with iron bunk beds. And every night we would troop down to this bunker
Mhm.
and spend the night there. That was a strange experience.
How did you get from that stage to becoming a doctor?
Well, my father's a physician, and after we came back from the country, he had an assistant, and they would eat lunch in the house, and I would hear them talking about doctor stuff. And even as a small child, before we were sent away to the country, I was allowed to sit in his consulting room. I would sit quietly in the corner, apparently, and listen to him seeing the patients. And my sister and I were allowed to help make up the medicines. He had a dispensary, and we would help count the pills and put them in the little round pill boxes. And we would wash out the empty medicine bottles and stick new labels on the bottles. So it was very much part of my life.
You never made a mistake.
I don't think so. We were very accurate.
Okay, so then you went ahead and did what to become a doctor?
I went to medical school in London, and got my examinations finished. I qualified in 1959 and did an internship, 6 months medicine, 6 months surgery. And then I was very, very unsure of what I wanted to do. So I conveniently had some relatives in Chicago, an uncle and an aunt and a cousin who had emigrated just before the war. So I went to stay with them and got a job at Michael Reese Hospital in Chicago. And I took another internship, which allowed me to take the exam to get a license in the state of Illinois. And then I did a residency in internal medicine in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And then I became involved with the civil rights movement at that time, and spent some time in the South.
Now, you told me you went twice.
Yeah.
The Freedom Summer
Yeah,
was
in
what?
Freedom Summer, I was just there a couple of weeks, and there was a group called the Medical Committee for Human Rights that was formed upon the request of the activists. James Foreman, came up and talked to some of the left-wing doctors, and this group, MCHR, was formed in 1964. And there was a group formed called Friends of SNCC, and we raised money for them, and they were brought north for rehabilitation if they were injured, or medical help if they had any medical needs. And it was through MCHR that teams of doctors and nurses, and now and then a social worker or psychologist, MCHR raised money and paid for them to go south and help the civil rights movement. And so then in the next year, in 65, I went back for about 5 months, and we ran a little sort of sub office out of Selma. And then we opened a little office in Montgomery also, and ultimately in Baton Rouge. And we coordinated the people who were sent down from the north to help out. Sometimes they would come for just a weekend, and sometimes they would come for a week or two. And we would assign them to different civil rights activist centers to help out.
Did you ever feel yourself threatened physically there?
A couple of times. I mean, most of the time I felt pretty secure, but there were a couple of times when we were kind of run out of town. It was, there were a few uncomfortable moments.
Uh-huh. Okay. And your career afterwards, what areas of medicine did you work in?
Well, when I came back, I decided to take a degree in public health, because my romantic life was not going well in Chicago, and I needed to get out of Chicago. So I got a position at the Columbia School of Public Health and did a master's degree there, which was amazing, because it turned out that was 1968. And that was the year of the uprising at Columbia. So MCHR sent us all in to help that. It was a wonderful summer. And I was active with MCHR, although I held part-time jobs. I worked with Planned Parenthood, with the one in Brooklyn. And then later on, I worked in an abortion clinic when it became legal in New York. And I also did some part-time work in a nursing home and with the HIP center in Brooklyn. They had a senior clinic. So I did a variety of part-time jobs for a while. And then, I also, the Judson Mobile Health Unit, I forgot that. The Judson Mobile Health Unit was a trailer truck parked down on the Lower East Side. And any kid could walk in and get free care because Judson Church had a Judson House where they housed runaways. At that time, this was 60, 69 and 70. There were a lot of runaways in the Lower East Side, and they couldn't get medical care because emergency rooms would ask for parental consent. So they would come to us on the street there. They could just walk in at any time and get medical treatment. So I did that for a couple of years. That was an interesting, I'd forgotten all about that unit.
You still have your medical license, don't you?
I keep the license up to date, but
So-
I
I don't, if anybody one
I'm
up there,
very out of date. I haven't practiced since 99. So it's been 22 years since I really doctored anybody.
all right. What's the story that brought you to New Paltz?
Well, I'm trying to think of the timing of all of this. So I was in New York in 67. In 70, I moved to Brooklyn. No, when I made a decision to have some children along the way. And so my son was born in 70. And I was with a group of leftists, medical people, and we decided to live communally. So we got a house, we rented a house in Borum Hill. And that's where Hampton, my son was an infant, and then my daughter Alice also. And then eventually that commune sort of broke up, and I bought a house, and I moved to Park Slope and stayed there for a couple of years and bought a house in 74 in Park Slope. And then I lived communally again in Park Slope for a few years. And then when the children were getting older, it was not feasible anymore. And I just lived in half the house. And then when did I get the house in Saugerties? I was folk dancing with this guy, Carl Finger, who some of you may know. And he used to do weekends in Saugerties at Solway House. And somebody said, why don't you get a country house? So in 81, I got a country house in Saugerties and liked it. And then by 83, I was with somebody and we decided New Paltz was a more interesting community than Saugerties and had more potential. And so we bought a house on Springtown Road. So I used to come up at weekends. And, I lived in Brooklyn and came up here for weekends.
Okay, now you were a pioneer in opening up this place. You were a couple of months later that you moved in, but you were waiting on the list while they were still building it, weren't you?
Yes, yeah. Oh, and I sneaked in. That's why I got such a good apartment. I sort of, you had to get through all sorts of barriers. So I sneaked in and pretty much could tell where the good views were. So I was very lucky because I actually put my name down for the oak at the end of the north wing.
Mhm.
And then quite by accident saw the blueprints and realized that it was a window short in the living room kitchen area. And I immediately changed my application to the south wing end, but was told that they only had the third floor. And I was devastated because I wanted to be on the top with nobody above me. And then that lady dropped out. So I got my choice. I got the top floor, nobody above me. Only one wall is adjoining anybody else, and she's really quiet. And the people opposite didn't have a dog. So, and I've got a magnificent view, which I'll show you if if you ask me, I'll show you my view.
Give us some reminiscences of what it was like when there were only a few people living here.
Well, I think we all came down to dinner every night. And
With reservations or without?
no reservations. And it was a wonderful deal. The entree came with soup or salad and a dessert, and which was in some ways not good because many people, we all took the dessert because you need to pay for it anyway. And some people gained weight. So I always took the fruit cup, which was very good. And it was really nice, but you know, things have to change. And I remember once I brought my whole hiking group in for lunch, and we just 18 of us walked in, and we were able, they made us long table, and we all got sandwiches and soup and everything. It was much looser than it is now, but of course, there was much less activities. I mean, most of these groups that I'm in didn't exist in the beginning. And I'm trying to think what did exist in the beginning. When did the council start? The council started pretty early. And the other thing is, I was not very active with the other groups because I was committed to be 2 days in the city. I had in '09, after I moved in here, I became a lucky grandmother. So I spent a couple of days a week with my grandchildren in Brooklyn. They lived in my old house in Brooklyn. And so I would go down every Sunday night and come back on Tuesday night. So I never really volunteered to be on any committees because I didn't feel I really knew, you know, what was going on. So I didn't become active with all these committees until probably 2014 or 15, when I was no longer much use as a babysitter.
Okay, I want to talk for just a minute about something that's peripheral to this. Nobody here in the audience remembers Steffi Lauer. Is there anybody who remembers her? One
Yeah,
person.
Bernice would.
Stephanie Lauer, her paintings are all over the halls, very good paintings.
Yeah.
She was an author. She was an actress. She was a poet.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is this generation of people who actually had been in the war, or at least peripherally knew about the war. She was a semi-buddy of June's because they both came from England
Yeah.
and were what?
Well, Steffi was born and raised in Berlin, of a pretty upper class Jewish family, very well to do. I think they had a maid and a nanny, and fancy apartment, and you know, sort of crystal at dinner and stuff like that. And in '39, the father was taken away. I don't know which came first. At some point, the father was disappeared, and the mother managed to get the kids onto the kinder transport. So Steffi and her brother, I think she was 11 or 12 in '39, they were sent to London, and then evacuated to the country in London. And eventually the father was on his way to a concentration camp. Obviously a smart man. He somehow escaped. He got off the train and walked away, and eventually made his way to the US. I don't know quite through what countries. And the mother, who remained in Berlin after the kids were sent to London, she eventually got out. Again, I don't know the details. And they were reunited after a couple of years in England. And then in 1947, the mother and the two children came to the US and were reunited with the father. I mean, the whole thing was incredible.
Okay, I'm just fascinated by the notion that the generation that lived through all this is very fast disappearing. And there have been a lot of interesting people who came here, lived here for a while, and have passed on. We're hanging on. But June showed what it's like to be a doctor or to be a caring person, because Steffi spent her last months going through terrible cancer and being in the wheelchair. And June gave, I remember being so impressed at all the hours that June gave to pushing her around. So that's why I had to just bring it all up.
Oh,
Now, this is a very busy woman, but she will consent to answer some of your questions if you do have any. Are there questions, or are you out of breath? Yes. Wait.
oh, the dancing.
You forgot to mention dancing and organizing the dance in the game room
Oh.
and and a few other things. And what do you do in your free time, did you say?
Dance group at the community center. Some of you attended the International Folk Dancing group that we came and gave a performance. So every Thursday, I'm missing it today. I had to email him and apologize for my absence. But at 1:30 on Thursdays at the community center, we do Balkan folk dancing, which is really nice. And I've been doing that, for a lot of years. I took it up in Park Slope in Brooklyn with this guy Carl Finger. I did the folk dancing, and I've done it on and off over the years. And then also I do the English country dancing, which we do once a month in Port Ewan. So, and with, of course, Nora's class, dancing has been an important part of my life. As a small child, I did ballet. A lot of little English girls go to ballet school. I did ballet and tap and what they called acrobatics and musical comedy, which is sort of like modern dance, I guess. So dancing is an important part of my life, but I thought we might start English here. I'm not sure. It's something I'm still thinking
That would be
about.
nice. Okay, any other questions? All right. I thank you, June. It's been a wonderful interview, and we've enjoyed having you. Thank you.
Thank you.